have two presentations tonight. We were in a closed session. We already had our call to order, and in keeping that, our minutes show the items that were discussed during closed session, or at least the topics. Mark Toscano wants to make some corrections to it.
Just a couple of points. There's obviously the Thanksgiving holiday agenda was released earlier than it would have been. So just for point of clarifications, the board's in executive session. We did not discuss any matters of personnel that were identified in number 1 on the agenda. We did discuss number 4, matters concerning negotiations, specifically negotiations with the WPEA for sidebars. The board also did discuss matters involving number 7, the food service contract resolution, which is noted on the agenda. Matter with docket number MID-L-0056858-17, and notice letters for race off property neighbors. The board did not discuss number 8, any personnel item issues as noted on the agenda. The board did discuss number 9, the HIV complaint investigation. Those were announced prior to starting the next session. Obviously, I wasn't here yet, so just clarifying this while everyone's here tonight.
Okay, I'm going to ask Dr. Idaho to introduce our auditor.
Good evening, everyone. Each year we're required by law to have an independent auditor do a review of our financial position and do a controls check on our systems. Pleased to have Scott McClellan here this evening. Scott is with the Whiskey Company, and Scott has been performing the audit for so many years now. And I'd like to invite him to the microphone to provide an update and overview of this year's audit report.
Good evening, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight to discuss the results of the audit, which I think you're going to find is good news as that, and in every year that I've presented the last couple of years. First of all, I'd like to thank you. Wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. We'll get a good long weekend. Unfortunately, I had to work. The audit's out the door, but anyway. I want to thank the administration for all the time and effort that they put into helping us get through the audit process. It's a several hundred-hour engagement. We're here for several weeks. It's not 3 days in and out. We're here quite a bit. We ask for a lot of information. And as part of the process, as the superintendent mentioned, we do spend a lot of time looking at your control processes over your major systems, being purchasing and cash disbursements, over your payroll system, as well as your revenue. So we do spend a lot of time looking at that, and then after June 30th, we come back in and we take a look at your various different account balances and so forth, and then audit procedures, perform procedures in order to render an opinion. About several weeks ago, we met with the Finance Committee. We went over the report at length, went over questions, concerns, issues, etc. And so tonight I'm just going to give you a high-level overview. I believe you would have received the 2 reports several weeks ago. It's a large report, which is the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, which has the numbers in it. And then a smaller report is called the AMR, or the Auditor's Management Report. I want to mention that the audit is completed and will be filed well in advance of the state deadline, which is December 5th. The most important component, even though it's a 170-page document, there are 3 pages in there at the very, very front that represent the opinion that the auditor places on the financial statements. And the opinion is a clean opinion, or in technical terms, non-modified opinion, which is the highest level of an opinion to be placed on the financial statements, meaning that the information that was provided to us was verifiable, confirmable, etc., in order for us to do enough procedures to render a clean opinion. I also want to point out that this is the 9th consecutive year that this district is receiving or received the Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting. Not many districts in the state are receiving that award. Again, 9 consecutive years. I think about 30 districts in the state receive that out of the 600 that exist in the state of New Jersey. From a control perspective, we did not identify any control weaknesses, no significant deficiencies, no material weaknesses, and that's really a credit to the strong background of the individuals who work in your finance department. Your BA and your assistant BA and so forth are very, very strong, very, very good, very, very accounting oriented, and are always seem to be trying to do the right thing to make sure the numbers are presented properly. Some of the financial highlights, you're in a very, very good financial position as you have for years. You continue to put funds away into various reserves which are permitted by the state of New Jersey, and all your reserves from an audit perspective are within the statutory boundaries of balances that you're allowed to maintain. At the end of the year, you have a capital reserve set aside of about $28 million, some of which is being used for capital items in your 2017-18 budget. Keep in mind that those items must be used for capital-related items. You have an emergency reserve set aside for $1 million, and you also have a maintenance reserve set aside for $1.4 million. Again, the last component is you have fund balance in excess of the 2%. It's about $12 million at the end of June 30, 2017. So again, very good financial position. Reserves set aside, and reserves give you the benefit of actually getting very high ratings in your bonds as well, which a lot of districts have much lower ratings than you do because of those balances. From a management report perspective, or the smaller report, I'm happy to report there were no findings noted this year, so there will be no corrective action plan we'll have approved this year. Again, it's a credit to the administration for the hard work in maintaining control processes. And so with that, I'd like to just open it up to any questions you may have regarding the financial statements or the procedures that we've been having.
Any questions?
Could you explain what is the limit for capital reserve?
It's as long as it's under the local share of the funds set aside for the long-range facility plan or in your future plans for facilities.
Any other questions? This one's a key lawyer that doesn't generate questions too. Well, I want to thank you for the time you've put in, the work you've done, and thank Chris, Larry, and everyone in the board office who's worked hard getting these set up for them, and just the work during the year, everyone making sure that our finances have been controlled and the district's been properly run.
Yeah, as long as well, a lot of districts be any of the strong people you have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The gentleman standing right there is Larry Castro, our comptroller, and I just want to say thank you to Larry for being here this evening and the work that he has to do. Larry Castro, our former assistant superintendent for finance, retired June 30th. Shot it, do that. Promoting you. Congratulations.
He did a lot of the work.
So Larry and Larry. I think Chris came in July 1st. There was a lot of work in transition. And thank you to Chris and Larry and Scott and their teams for all the work they did. And the backbone of the business office, of course, Lou Rock and Karen Crucio and Sandy Brown and their teams. So a lot of work by a lot of people. Thank you for your work. Thank you.
Okay, I should have said that we were going slightly out of order so that order can leave or go to his next appointment. This brings us to Mrs. Martin Smith with the presentation of the 2018-19 high school program of studies.
Good evening. It's my pleasure to be able to present this evening the proposed revisions to the 2018-19 high school program of studies, which will be presented this evening, discussed again at the December curriculum committee meeting, and then voted on by the full board at the December 19th board meeting. There are proposed revisions in a variety of departments. We can see them listed here, from art all the way through proposing a new department called media, and then the student assistant program. I'll take each of these one at a time and talk about what the proposed revisions are in each of these departments. In the art department, Last year, we completed a Fine and Performing Arts program review, and one of the recommendations that came out of that program review is that for equivalent courses, we provide students the opportunity in the arts to be able to receive honors credit and honors weighting in that. So one of our proposals in the art department is that students who are studying in drawing and painting too have the ability to study this either at the CP college prep level or at the honors level. Now, it's not exactly the same equivalency as we would have in other departments, because in each of the other departments, language arts, math, science, social studies, and world languages, we offer at least 2 sections of courses, one at the college prep level and one at the honors level. But, for example, in drawing and painting too, we may only have one single section, so we couldn't offer 2 different sections, one at CP and one at honors. So what we are proposing is that the students would have an option of choosing, even though they would be in the same section, of either receiving college prep credit or receiving honors credit. The way that would work is the teachers would work together collaboratively to develop a contract which would be presented to the students in September when they return into the course. And at that time, they would have an opportunity to review that at home with their parents. And then if they wish to receive honors credit, they would know exactly what the criteria are to be able to receive honors credit. And they would sign off on that by the end of September. They and their parents would sign off on that, and they would have the option then to receive honors credit with the differentiated expectations in terms of what that course would entail. So rather than having 2 different sections, because we don't necessarily have the student enrollment to offer 2 different sections, it would allow an opportunity for a student to either have it at a college prep credit weighting or at an honors level. In the computer science department, we have a course called Digital Media. This is, the changes we're proposing here are somewhat related to the next slide that I'll be talking about also. Currently, there's a prerequisite because we're going to move that. We're proposing that we remove that course from the computer science department into the engineering department and redesign it. We'd like to eliminate that as a prerequisite for digital media, and then therefore students in 9th through 12th grade could study it, since they do not have to have a prerequisite in order to enroll in the digital media course. In the engineering department, we've had a course in the computer science department called Graphic Computer Applications. We are proposing that we move this to the engineering department and that it get retitled as Graphic Engineering, and we update the course description. Fundamentally, this moves the course from just a 2D design to also include 3D design. When this course was originally conceptualized, we did not have 3D computers and we didn't have the capacity to do 3D design, but now that we have that capacity, we want to be able to add that into the course, be able to use that as part of it, so it fits more in with an engineering perspective. And so that's sort of the shift that we're making even with the digital media. This course is no longer a prerequisite for the digital media course as the graphic computer applications course used to be. Family and Consumer Science Department, the first thing is that currently we call the department Life Skills, which is a rather outdated term, and the area has been known as a content area as Family and Consumer Science, so we would like to update the name of the department to Family and Consumer Department. And then the second is we have had a course that we've offered for many years called Fashion Strategies. We want to rebrand that course as Creative Design and update the course description. In the process of doing that, not only will students study fashion strategies, fashion design as a piece of it, but integrate also interior design and layouts as a part of that course. So a more updated look at that course and what it would study. In the Language Arts Department, the first is really just clarifying the prerequisite as it's been in the program of studies. Currently, it says that in order to be able to study AP Literature and Composition, that you have to have taken AP Language and Composition as a junior. But in reality, that's never been the practice. We have always allowed students who've either taken AP Language and Composition or LA3 or LA3 Honors in their junior year to be able to take AP Literature and Composition. So we just want to clarify that and actually update it so that it follows what the practice has always been, which is allowing students, as long as they meet the criteria that are set out for that course, either if they've had LA3 CP, LA3 honors, or if they've taken the AP language and composition course in the junior year to be able to be in the course. So that's the clarification there. In eliminating the reading and writing laboratory courses, those are courses that have been on the books for probably a decade and a half, 2 decades, that existed when the state used to have the high school proficiency assessment, the HESPA assessment. You were required, any student who did not pass that assessment in 11th grade was then required in their senior year to be enrolled in a separate course to be able to support them to be able to pass that hopefully in their senior year. But when the HESPA went away several years ago and we changed the requirements for high school graduation and the assessments that were necessary, those 2 courses, while we kept them on the books, we haven't run them for the past 3 or 4 years. So at this point, we don't see any need for them to continue on since we haven't run them for several years. So we're just proposing that we take them out of the program of study since they don't really exist anymore in actuality. Probably the biggest proposal that we're changing has to do with the mathematics department, and this is that we're proposing that we change the sequence of courses for the majority of students in 9th and 10th grade that they would take. Currently, the majority of students in 9th grade take geometry, and then in 10th grade take Algebra 2. We're recommending that students who are coming out of Algebra 1 in 8th grade instead would go into Algebra 2 in 9th grade, and then they would study geometry in 10th grade. There's a series of reasons behind this and the decision-making process, but fundamentally feeling that mathematically it makes more sense for students to continue the sequence in algebra and follow that through, particularly as they're making the transition from middle school, since the majority of our students study Algebra 1 in 8th grade, as they move into 9th grade, continuing with that, and then from geometry moving into pre-calc, which has a lot of topics related to trigonometry and the connection there, that those kinds of things would follow more naturally in their sequence. Also, just as a little bit of history and background, the order of courses have, of course, changed over the decades, just sort of depending how things are. How we ended up with the geometry Algebra 2 sequence was when when students used to take Algebra 1 in 9th grade, and then if they took Algebra 2 in 10th grade, and then geometry in 11th grade in their junior year, they were simultaneously taking the SATs in their junior year, and the SATs had a lot of Algebra 1 and all of geometry in it, and students had not completed, so there was a need to be able to flip that sequence, so that sequence happened there. Then, a decade or so later, the idea was you don't take Algebra 1 in 9th grade, that actually students are prepared to be able to take Algebra 1 in 8th grade. So when we moved that back, we didn't flip the sequence at that time. We just kept the sequence that we had in place and continued on, but we feel at this time it makes most sense. Also, for anybody who knows the sequence for students who are in the Honors and Accelerated program, those students do follow the Algebra 1, Algebra 2 geometry sequence already. So we've already had a group of students in the district who've been following this path of Algebra 1, Algebra 2 all along. So that's the proposal in the mathematics department, is to just switch the sequence of those courses and when students would traditionally take them. We're talking about creating a new media department. It sounds all exciting. It's not really all that big of a deal. We have had a series of courses in broadcast writing, TV production, journalism, advanced journalism, that have been listed in the LA department, but have actually been overseen by a variety of people, both in computers and technology and LA. Since they all have to do with media, we felt it's better to put them under a label of the media department, since they're all related to that kind of area. It doesn't change what the courses are in any sort of way. It doesn't change who's going to be supervising them, who's going to be teaching them, or actually the course description. We just thought that it makes most sense to bring them together and actually put them in a department that sort of recognizes what it is that they're studying, which is in the area of media and communications. Next, the music department. The first, again, relates back to the recommendation that came out of the program review for the fine and performing arts area, and that is that we allow students to be able to take the upper level classes in choir, band, and orchestra at either the college prep or honors level. Now, you might say, well, here we do have a little bit of a differentiation because we actually have 3 levels of courses. We have the freshman level courses in each of these areas, which are not listed here, and then we have the courses that sophomores through seniors take. So there's concert choir and chamber choir, symphonic orchestra, wind ensemble in the band area, and then symphony orchestra and philharmonic. The difference here, though, is that students have to audition to be able to get into these courses, so it's not just simply signing up for the courses, it's an audition process. And it's very possible, depending upon the year, that, for example, if there's a large number of tuba players, there just won't be a large number of spots in the wind ensemble at the highest level for tuba players that year. But another year, if there's less, there might be. So just simply saying that the highest level would be honors and not the 10th through 11th, 12th grade, we didn't feel would have been fair to all students to have the opportunity to do CP or honors. So again, once again, we're recommending that these courses provide students with a contract that in September they would review along with their parents, that they would understand what the distinction is between receiving college prep or honors credit, and then once they decided that they would like to receive honors credit, they would sign that contract and they would be required to follow throughout the year with the extra requirements that would be required. But this allows us an opportunity to provide all students in 10th through 12th grade to receive honors credits in that content area. And then the other exciting addition out of the program recommendation is the addition of a music technology course. And this is recognizing that a lot of music today happens digitally, and that a lot of composition and a lot of work that is done in that area. And that while we've had a strong fine and performing arts program, we have not allowed students an opportunity to pursue that type of study of music within the school system. So we would like to add a music technology course to the program, so allow students to develop compositional capacities using computers, the digital realm. Science department. First, eliminate conceptual physics. This is a little bit like the reading and writing labs. This was a course that was proposed 7 years ago. It ran for about 2 or 3 years, but really had a difficult time getting students to enroll in the course because most students follow the sequence of biology in freshman year, chemistry in 10th grade, and then on into physics or AP courses in those other areas. And we're not studying conceptual physics in 9th grade. The course is actually not run for the past 3 school years, and because of that, well, it's been on the books, but we haven't run it. We're just saying at this point we don't have the interest to be able to run this course, so we would eliminate that out of the program of studies. The second proposed change in the science department is to add an advanced placement AP environmental science course. We do have an environmental science course currently that students can study, but it is not the AP program. It is not aligned to that program. Students, we cannot give AP credit for it currently, and we don't follow the audit process. Our current curriculum for that course is not aligned, so we'd like to add an advanced placement in environmental science course. This would open up another possibility for students who don't want to study maybe advanced placement biology or advanced placement chemistry or do AP physics work in the advanced topics in physics course. So it just provides a different avenue for students to study a college level science course at a higher level, slightly different. And the last one really is, again, like to clarify the prerequisite for advanced topics in physics. It's very similar to what we're doing in the AP language, where we have a practice for what we've required, which is that you have to have had physics before you take the advanced topics in physics class, but it doesn't state that in the program of studies. We just like to clean that up and clarify that you need to have had physics, which is the practice, and that's what we've always followed, but just to state it clearly in the program of studies. So those are the proposed recommendations around there. Last one is, again, just a clarification. In the World Languages Department, we have a course called Spanish Language and Cultural Study. Every student who takes that course has had as a prerequisite Spanish Communication and Cultural Studies, C&C course. In the program of studies, it says you also could have studied for 1 year in the middle school. Nobody goes into the Spanish Language and Cultural Study out of the middle school course. They come out of the high school Communication and Cultures course, so we just want to clarify what the actual process is. So 3 of these prereq changes that we're recommending here really are just making sure that we follow through on what our practice has always been, and that it's very clear in the program of studies. And then the last, you may or may not be aware, but we have a program called the Student Assistant Program. This allows students to, in essence, volunteer if they would like to help out in a variety of areas. They can volunteer to be an assistant in the media center. They can volunteer to be an assistant in guidance. They can volunteer to be an assistant to a departmental supervisor, or occasionally they can also work with certain teachers, particularly in the science area, with helping set up labs. Fundamentally, these are clerical assistants that work with different people in those areas to help them out and support. Both of the high school principals came forward and felt that there really isn't a curriculum for this course. There really isn't any sort of course of study that we're following, and students may do this over multiple years, but yet we were giving credit for this as if it was an academic program. So they talked to the students about this, and the students said, no, I'm not doing this for credit. Students don't need the 2.5 credits or the 1.25 if they were doing it for half a year or only part-time, that it's really not a credit thing that students are doing it for, but they would like the recognition that they've done this work, so they would want it on their transcript. So what we're recommending is keep it in the program of studies, keep it on a student's transcript, but no longer provide credits for this, so that because there's not really an academic program for it, and there really isn't a curriculum, and you're really not supposed to give credits for the same thing year after year after year, but yet students will often do this in multiple years, depending upon what their interests are and depending upon what their schedule allows them to do. So we're proposing that we eliminate the credits for the student assistance program, but that we do maintain it in the program of studies, and that we do continue to list it on a student's transcript so that they could get recognition for any kind of assistance work that they've done. And obviously, if they were applying to colleges, they could write about it, and they could also ask the individuals with whom they worked on the assistant program to write a recommendation and talk about the kind of skills and work that they were doing within that program. So there's a few recommendations that we're making. So at this time, I'll take any questions that anybody has on this.
Could you just give me an example, pick music, for example, of what the difference in the contract, what the contract would be that would define honors versus CP?
I don't want to speak for the teachers because they haven't come together yet, and it would, should the board pass this at the December meeting, what would happen is from January through the end of the school year, they would work with their departmental supervisor. They'd investigate what is out there in terms of places that have done this. We're not the first district to have done things like this. I know myself in a previous district, we had this kind of difficulty in our Latin program that we didn't have enough enrollment to offer two separate courses, but yet students who were studying Latin wanted to be able to receive in that area. It had to do with the types of assessments the students were given and the criteria that were being used in their assessment and some of the rigor of the work. Sometimes they had additional topics that they were covering. I can't really say one of the things that has come out in the music area is that there's often requirements for additional types of performance opportunities. We have a lot of requests across the community for people to be able to perform, small groups of individuals to perform. So it may be that students who want to receive honors credit are willing to make an additional commitment beyond the regular performances that happen during the year that are expected, to attend a couple of community events and perform there. But there could also be maybe some other differentiation in some of the music that they're studying. But that would ultimately be something that the teachers would sit down, they would make a decision of what they felt was legitimate for being able to distinguish between receiving college prep and honors credit, and they go through the process of approval from their supervisor. Then it would come to me, I would review that and make sure that I felt that it was legitimate, and whatever that set of requirements is in the contract that we would have would be consistent across all of these courses and across both High School North and High School South.
So that's a lot of additional work for the teachers. Are they enthusiastic about this?
Yes, they are, because it came out of the program recommendation, and there has been a feeling all along that potentially students didn't continue to study on. There's been some recommendation, we don't have hard data to show this, but there's been some recommendation that maybe students at some times make a decision not to continue in the music area in particular, probably not as much as art, because if your passion's art, you're probably going to study it regardless, but sometimes people are feeling that a student may not continue on to a third or a fourth year of choir when they could potentially take another course at an honors level. And because the music area didn't have any courses. Art did have the Advanced Placement Studio course and the AP Art History courses, so actually those courses were weighted at AP level, but in the music area there was no course that a student could receive honors credit for. And people have talked about that unfairness, that fundamental unfairness that a department doesn't have the capacity to be able to. So yeah, the teachers, came out of both the internal and the external reports of the program review as a direction we should go as we move forward.
So is this going to be posted?
Yes, the presentation will be posted tomorrow on the website. It'll be on the, you mean on the, we'll make sure that it's there on the front page from now until the December 19th board meeting when the board votes on that. Yep.
Okay, and then we have one other question. Sure. So if a student decides to change from, say they're in the CP level of one of these music classes and decide, really want to do honors, is it the same deadline process as it would be to do a level change in any other subject area?
So the way that process would work is that they're all, when they sign up for the courses, they wouldn't make anything because they don't know what the difference is in terms of they would just sign up for the course, but they'd know that's a possibility because it'll be outlined in the program of studies. They'd be all moved in because, again, we don't have multiple sections. We don't have ACT section and honor section. They'd all be enrolled in. When they return to school in September, the teachers would review what the expectations are with them. There'd be a written contract that would be handed to them. It would also be, so the parents would be able to review it. Then they'd have to have their parents and themselves sign off, and that I'm assuming the deadline for that would be by September 30th, the end of the first month of school. And then at that point, once we have the names of all of those, we would then move them into a section of the course that would be called honors. It would still meet at the same time with the same teacher, with the same group of students, but it would now all of a sudden, from that point forward on their transcript, it would indicate that they were doing concert choir honors as opposed to concert choir CP.
Rachel?
I guess just a clarification on the process for the music. So you mentioned earlier that there would be auditions.
So there's always been. So regardless of you audition for the highest level classes starting in 10th grade, and that process will continue the same. So this is not, and that's one of the reasons why we're recommending that both let me go back to, here we go. So we have concert choir, which is for 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. And then we have chamber choir, which is by audition, which could be for 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. So we're not recommending just chamber choir have the capacity to receive honors credit. We want both of those because of the auditioning process. It's a slightly different thing. So kids may end up in concert choir or chamber choir, or may end up in symphonic band or wind ensemble, or may end up in symphony orchestra or philharmonic, depending upon the audition. And as I said, there's a variety of criteria that they follow all year, but the bottom line is part of it is when you're putting your orchestra together, when you're putting your band together, you need so many instruments and just depending upon the students, and the same thing when you're putting your different choirs together, you're going to need so many voices at, tenors and altos and so on and so forth. So it's not really an equivalency of simply somehow merit of performance and saying definitively that the 3 people who get in on violin are versus the 3 tuba players. I don't know how many there are, but 2 tuba players, 1 tuba player. So because of that, it adds a bit of a complicating factor. And as we discussed this through, That's why we're recommending that it not just be chamber, wind, and philharmonic, the highest level of each of those content areas, but that we provide all sophomores through seniors the capacity to study at either college prep or honors, regardless of what the audition process ends up deciding of which level you're going to be in.
So the teachers make, after the audition's done, that's when the decision is.
Yeah, the auditions are done in the spring, and the kids know what they're going into, and all the CP honors things would happen in the fall once you're in the class.
And then it's after those decisions are done, then the contract is provided.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
And then just a quick question on the contract. When we say you sign a contract, I'm assuming, is that mainly like signing an acknowledgement of your acknowledgement of the requirement?
Right. It is. I would like to receive honors credit from this course. I understand that the requirements for are as follows, and then it will outline explicitly what those requirements are.
Yeah, I just want to add. Okay.
Go ahead.
Actually, I just want to. No, it's not that. I just want to add on top of what Martin was saying. The other reason I talk to students and parents is also because some students are qualified for the highest level, like harmonic, symphony, orchestra, but because of scheduling, you're not able to take it. So you have to take the second level. So I think it's a good idea to have the two top level available for all students. Yeah, for that reason also.
I had a question about the conceptual physics course.
Sure.
Yeah. What level course is that?
It was when conceptual physics. Conceptual physics was, I believe, 7 years ago was the first time that it was offered, and it came out of the physics first movement and the idea that ninth graders would take physics first. So the course was called Conceptual Physics. We ran into some difficulties right off the bat as soon as we started offering the course. One of them just was the general sense that the normal sequence of courses is biology in your freshman year, chemistry in your 10th, in your sophomore year, and then physics. So there was that. But the other piece of it is, from the pedagogical point of view, the teachers found it difficult to be able to teach a physics course without the algebra that's necessary. And so students who were in ninth grade were, if they weren't strong math students, were struggling a bit in the conceptual physics class. And the strong math students tended to follow the sequence of biology, chemistry, physics. So it was proposed at a time when the idea was that every student should take physics, and when it's in your junior year, not every student necessarily does. So the thought was, by moving it to freshman year, you could get all students to be able to. So putting it first, but it didn't really take hold for both the reasons culturally of students and what kids wanted to study in terms of their sequence of courses, but also a little bit of the pedagogical. So the course just sort of, after 2 to 3 years, petered out in terms of enrollment. And as I said, it's been on the books, but we haven't run a section out for the past 2 school years, and this school year we don't have any students enrolled in this course.
Okay, and so that material is covered in the other.
Yeah, it's covered in physics, and then untouched.
Yeah, I got a question. Yeah, first, in 3 courses, 3 departments, some courses got pre-request clarified. What does that mean? You mean, does it mean we are removing certain prerequisites? For word language, for science, and for language arts?
Okay, so
it clarified, yeah.
AP literature and composition.
Okay, what does the term mean, clarify?
So,
clarify the prerequisite, yeah.
Currently, it says that you need to have taken advanced placement language and composition. But actually, you don't have to have taken advanced placement language and composition. You could have taken LA3 or LA3 honors. So we want to clarify that the process we've always followed is that the PreReq is not just AP Lang and Comp, as it states in the program of studies, but also LA3 and LA3. So we want to clarify the procedure we've always followed.
Okay.
And in essence, update it.
Okay, gotcha, thank you. And also for the AP Environmental Science, what's the prerequisite for that, and which level?
It's advanced placement, it's a college level course.
Yeah, what's a prerequisite for
The
to take?
prerequisites will be both biology and chemistry.
Okay, so okay.
Either biology and chemistry CP, or biology and chemistry honors, or a combination of biology CP and chemistry honors, or biology honors and chemistry CP.
And that's what's taking a biology course in chemistry.
Right, exactly. And
Gotcha.
it doesn't matter at what level. Now, the grades you have to have received in them according to the board criteria then does vary, but you have to have had biology, you have to have had chemistry to be able to take the college level at advanced physical environments.
And now what's the prerequisite for the advanced topics in physics?
It is that you have taken physics and that you're currently enrolled in a calculus class.
Not necessarily multivariable.
No.
Okay, gotcha.
Just in the calculus course.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Anyone else?
Okay, thanks. So again, as I said, we'll review this again in curriculum committee on our December 11th meeting. So I would, if there's any further questions from the board, I'd recommend that you funnel them either to me or to Dana, so that when we have that meeting, we can discuss those then. And then this will be on the December 19th board meeting for a final vote by the board, so that we can have it ready for January, because the enrollment process for next year starts in January.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to the first opportunity for public comment. The board invites thoughts and reactions on agenda items and items of concern from members of our community who are present. Each participant is asked to give his or her name and address prior to making a statement, which will be limited to 3 minutes. All statements should be directed to the presiding officer, and the public comment period in total is going to be limited to 60 minutes.
Thank you. Linda Jeever, 20 Hawthorne Drive, Construction. Just want to say congratulations to the group on her re-election. It's great. Thank you to YZ for your service on this report. I know it's a lot of work. Much appreciated. It's great to hear the athletic report that's in very good financial shape. And I know all of you have worked very hard on that, so that's great to see. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. Lisa Friedman for the Board of West Windsor. It was wonderful to hear the auditors this evening and hear once again, I think they said the last 8 or 9 years, how we are exceeding our expectations. It was very disheartening over the past few months to see people malign the fiduciary responsibility of the administration. And I hope that they watch the video of this evening and see that, in fact, you've been acting in everybody's best interest, the best interest of the district and the constituents. Also, unbelievable to watch and listen to all the curriculum information. You blow my mind, Martin, when you explain things. You go very, very fast. And I try to follow you. It really is impressive. We were just discussing, you couldn't pay us enough money to do what you do. It's just obviously taking in mind everything that is involved with creating, maintaining, and pushing forward curriculum. Is mind-blowing, and it's exciting to see that our students are going to be benefiting from all these changes and morphing and so forth, and staying current and moving forward with the educational movements that are so important is in the forefront. So again, huge thank you and congratulations to all of you for the hard work that you do and keeping us where we need to be. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Changes are really
That's going to bring us to committee reports. Administration of facilities will go first.
The Administration and Facilities Committee met on Tuesday, November 21st. We began our meeting reviewing the administration's recommendations for capital project work that will take place in the summer of 2018. Next, we reviewed Strauss SVA's suggested policy and regulation 7424 that provides guidance on bed bugs in schools. District nursing and maintenance staff provided feedback on the policy. The procedures outlined in the regulation are consistent with district practices, so we're moving this forward for a first reading tonight. After months of discussion and feedback given by district administrators, the Superintendent's Advisory Council, PTA leadership, and the board, the committee supports the academic calendar that appears on tonight's agenda for the 2019-2020 school year. Gerard Dalton updated the committee on the recent Parent University program entitled How to Parent in the Age of Social Media. Over 100 parents attended the program that was facilitated by Gerard Dalton, the Director of Guidance, Lou McDonald, and our Director of Technology, Rick Cade. In addition, two guest speakers included 2 high school students who provided some student perspective. Finally, the committee discussed the delayed approval on the memorandum of agreement with law enforcement, which appears also on tonight's agenda. Typically, the board approves this annually during the summer, but this year the districts across the state were advised to hold off on the approval because the New Jersey Department of Education planned to modify the agreement. But recently, we found out that districts were notified that the plan modifications had not occurred and that we should go ahead and move forward with the agreement in its prior form. So the only addition is that the document now has a list of contacts from local law enforcement that communicates who would have access to district security cameras in emergency situations. The A&F committee will next meet on Monday, December 11th.
Thank you. Any questions? Curriculum?
The Curriculum Committee also met on November 21st. The committee reviewed the proposed changes to the 2018-2019 high school program of studies. Mr. Smith will present these to the board at tonight's meeting, as you've already heard, and the board vote on the approval of the 2018-19 program of studies will take place at the December 19th board meeting. The committee next reviewed the newly revised 2016-17 school accountability profiles. The state reported on 5 indicators: participation rate, which is the goal is 95% participation in the park; academic achievement, ultimately to meet the goal of 80% of students passing by 2030; academic progress, which is to meet the standard of moderate growth in the median student growth percentile scores in grades 4 to 8 on the park; graduation rate, which is meets 95% of students graduating high school in 4 to 5 years; and school quality, 95% or fewer students with chronic absenteeism. The goals are for the district and each school and include a measure for all students as well as each subgroup. These reports will be officially released by the New Jersey Department of Education in the school performance reports at a future date. Next, the committee recommends approval of the submission of the revised grant submission for the fiscal year 2018 Elementary and Secondary School Act grant for the state of New Jersey, originally approved for submission on July 25th, 2017. The committee recommends approval of the disposal of obsolete books in accordance with regulations 7300.1 from the High School South Media Center, the Maurice Park Elementary School Library, and the Millstone River School Library. The committee also recommends approval of the overnight field trips for the Grover Middle School, Union Middle School, and High School North and South FTC and FRC robotics teams to go to Detroit, Michigan in April. The High School North Model of Congress to go to Yale, Columbia, and the University of Pennsylvania. For Science Olympiad to go to MIT, Cornell, and Colorado State University. And for the Future Business Leaders of America to the State Conference in Atlantic City, and Washington Seminar to Washington, D.C. in March. High School South FRC robotics team to Mount Olive High School and Lehigh University, and the High School South cheerleaders to Orlando for the UCA National Cheer Competition. The committee will next meet on December 11th.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, finance.
Okay, the committee met on November 21st. We reviewed the proposed agenda item for tonight's meeting, and the committee recommends approval of the agenda items. Dr. Russo shared the budget calendar for budget development over the next coming months. He also shared his concerns that the budget will be tight as always, but I'm sure we'll figure something out. The committee discussed capital projects for the summer of 2018. It's important to begin work on those projects now so that the projects can actually happen over the summer. This included the ball stopper system at South, Phase 3 of roof repair at North, roof repair at Grover, plus a number of other projects. The administration explained problems the district is experiencing with getting plumbing permits and getting plumbing work done through Aramark, and at some point the district may need to create a lead plumber position within the school district. Dr. Russo also shared a proposed resolution regarding the Department of Agriculture and the way we procure food service contracts, and that's on the agenda. I think we're discussing it tonight. We're voting on that. The administration also discussed the likely need for a referendum in the future to fund some major capital expenses. The district has debt that we will start retiring in a couple of years, which means our debt service payments are scheduled to decline in the future, and we might be able to coordinate that with the future referendum needs so that we might be able to pay for a future referendum without increasing the tax rate. The committee is next meeting on Tuesday, December 12th.
Any questions on finance? Thank you. Can I have a motion on administration items 1 to 5 plus the yellow addendum sheet? Michelle and Carol. Any questions on the administration items?
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay. Curriculum, can I have a motion on items 1 to 3? Or Y, Z, and Dana? Any questions or comments on the curriculum?
I have a question on the estimates.
Which one?
I don't understand what this means prior to carrying over. Is this money that we do not use previously, or what is this?
Yes. So at the end of each year, we're required to do a financial report and an end of the year report. And each year, there's some monies which are left over, which haven't been spent. So, for example, in Title I, it was around $34,000. In Title II, it was about $4,000. Title III actually has been larger, is around $50,000. It's just the amount of money and what we're budgeting it for. So what we have to do is that we have to file an amendment and a different budget with those monies carried into it.
I mean, it's $336,000.
Well, no, that's not the carryover. That's this year's allotment plus the carryover. So for Title I, there is a 15% rule. You're only allowed to carry over 15%. And for Title II, but for Title III, you're actually able to carry over 100% of the monies. So the way we've been doing this is because we've never guaranteed the amounts of monies that are going to come in Title III, is we've actually budgeted it. We've been using these monies to be able to do supplemental staff positions that support students in both the ESL or immigrant students in content areas. And if we budgeted all the money in one single year, Then, when we find out about it the following year, if we didn't get the money, we'd have to immediately eliminate the position while the school year's in session. So we always carry over enough money to have 1 year's leeway in terms of that. So it's just kind of the way that we've been able to do it, and you're financially allowed to by the rules of the title grants to carry, in the Title III areas, to carry 100% of the monies over. So in order to have a little bit of a buffer, so, for example, if you take a look at Title III immigrant, the total amount of money is $101,000 and $823. Our actual allotment this year was around $50,000. So by carrying over that $50,000, it allows us to cover the full salary. That may not happen next year because it's looking like we're getting to the point where we're not going to have enough money, but it gave us a year's leeway to not have to turn to the person and say, oh, by the way, the grant money's run out. We don't have a position for you any longer. We're going to have to find you. So that's just the reason why we do that, because we want to be able to be, it's, I guess, sort of what we do with the full budget. We want to be able to ensure that we have enough money and we don't get into an emergency situation where at the last minute we're trying to have to scramble and readjust what people are doing in terms of their position. So it's just, it's what's allowable by the funds.
So you apply for these grants every year?
We actually don't. Well, we have to complete the application, but the state tells us how much money we get from the Fed. So they figure out what the funding is going to be based off of the federal funding formulas, and then they notify us each year of what those funding formulas are going to be. But we never really know. So, for example, if you take a look at Title II Part A, all last school year, the New Jersey Department of Education was telling us that we could expect less money than we've ever received before, and that we should kind of, in our mind, figure on 85%. We use that money fundamentally to allow us to be a project school for Teachers College and to pay for the professional development that we do there. And we were concerned that we were going to not have enough money to do it. Now, we didn't know this, but when they finally notified us of the amount, it turned out that we got $137,000. So it wasn't a 15% reduction. It was an increase of $37,000 over what we had. The nice thing about that is that we had proposed that we do a coaching institute this year, and we were able to now fold that into that as part. So it's hard to predict what the monies are going to be. And as I said, like with Title II for an entire year, every meeting and every memo that we would get from the state suggested that we were getting to see a decrease, but it increased. In Title III immigrant, the way you get Title III immigrant funds are based off of an increase of the percentage of students who are classified as immigrants. If you fit within a certain amount, you get more money. And the state every year tells us, well, don't guarantee that money the following year. So again, we budgeted it in a way that we at least have 1 year buffer, since it allows us for 100% carryover in that area. It's just sort of the way it works in terms of the feds make a determination of how much money the state's going to get, then the state has to look at all that. They have to determine what the formulas are going to be to the individual districts, and then when they finally get around to it, they sort of notify you that it's going to happen. So yeah, this is very late. Normally we would have done this in the past because the fiscal year for all of this started July 1st. But right, we didn't even find out the original until August, and then we didn't get the carryover until October.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Cruz?
Yes.
Mr. Wisely-Chan?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor-Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Hurst? And then Ms. Gage?
Yes.
And Mr. Flaherty?
Yes. Finance, can I have a motion on items 1 to 14 plus the blue addendum? Taylor and Rachel. Any questions on the finance side?
I have a question on the bid award for buildings and grounds. Where is this article going to be put in?
Any other questions?
Ms. Juliana?
Yes.
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 Ms. Gage?
Yes.
Mr. Flaherty?
I'm going to abstain on item 1 and vote yes on everything else. Personnel, can I have a motion on the personnel item plus the green addendum and the changes now?
I'd like to just clarify, just a couple things in the green, and you'll see some stuff that it says change the end date. That change is due to changing their salary. We had them on, these teachers were covering.
Yes.
Changing the increase in salaries. It's not changing their end date. And if you look down at non-communicated staff, you have Susan Wygrants. Also, it says to change the date. That's changing her resignation date. Okay.
Okay, so the change up top is they're still working. You change at the bottom means they stop.
Exactly.
All right, I have a motion, Louisa and Dana. Any questions or comments on the personnel?
Start with Ms. Curry.
Yes.
Ms. Curry.
Yes.
Ms. Bell.
Yes.
Ms. Juliana.
Yes.
Mr. Riley Jane.
Yes.
Mr. Ellis.
Yes.
Ms. Davis.
Yes.
Yes. Can I have a motion on approval of the minutes? Rachel and Carol. Any questions or comments on the minutes? Those in favor of approval say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any liaison reports? Any new business? It's the second opportunity for public comment. 15 minutes will be provided at the end of the meeting for public comments. Each participant is asked to give his or her name and address prior to making a statement, which will be limited to 3 minutes. All statements should be directed to the presiding officer.
Joy Horton, 10 Hopkins Court in Plainsboro, New Jersey. Just want to make a comment regarding overnight field trips in some of the clubs. I hope we are also making sure that we are providing opportunities for some of the minority kids in the district who may not be able to afford some of these club activities. It says that the cost of the trip is approximately $390 per student. Let's say for Model Congress, that is the cost that the parent has to pick up. So it's not the school that is picking up that cost, is my understanding. My son is also in Model Congress, so I know this, but I just want to make sure that we're also providing some type of resources or opportunities for some of those kids that can't afford that. Because what happens is that you have a whole segment or a whole group of children who aren't going to participate in some of these clubs because they can't afford it. So I just hope that the district is also making or providing some opportunities for some of those children or some resources for those children.
Thank you. Anyone else? I have a motion to adjourn.
Yeah. Aye.
Those in favor of adjourning say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? They were adjourned.